Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by Mukesh Gupta. Mukesh is a digital transformation and customer success enthusiast with over 2 decades of experience in sales, marketing, strategy, and business development. Currently serving as the Vice President of Customer Advocacy at SAP, he has dedicated his career to helping customers navigate the SAP universe and achieve their goals. Mukesh is also the author of 3 books, Your Startup Mentor, Thrive, and Being Happy. He's a keynote speaker on leadership, creativity, innovation, and culture. An alt MBA graduate, he is passionate about learning, staying current on technology, and making a difference in the world. I've asked him to join us here today to talk about his journey in all things entrepreneurship. So Mukesh, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. And I always like to ask people, like, how did you even get started in business and leadership and all of this? Are your parents entrepreneurs? Or do you come from like a capitalist family, an entrepreneurial family?
Frankly, yes and no to that question. My father was a career employee at a manufacturing, iron and steel manufacturing factory. In late years, he actually ventured out and became an entrepreneur by himself. He did okay for himself. What I'm really inspired by is my uncles. So my mother's brother is a successful entrepreneur. My father's elder brother was a successful entrepreneur and a teacher. So I think the entire thinking around entrepreneurship came from them. And I also had a lot of friends. I come from a community of people who are known to be business savvy and are running businesses all around the world. So I guess part of it is in the genes as well, and in the way we are raised as children as well. Leadership, I think, after I joined corporate life, I realized the importance of having a good leader and being a good leader. And that's where I started learning, and my interest developed from there on.
So what were some of your earliest business experiences? Were you working in a family, like a business of your uncles, or how?
My first job actually was okay. So when I wanted to do my graduation, I was very clear in my head that I want to learn how to run and grow a business because I saw my uncles being so successful at it. So when I spoke to my uncle, he said the best way to learn any business is to actually go work for a business and learn from them. So he actually connected me to one of his business partners. They gave me a job. And my uncle was very clear to them that just because he's my nephew, you don't have to treat him special. He's
Right.
there to learn. So give him any and all opportunities for him to learn and grow as an individual. So right from the interview process, I think I remember distinctly it was an Indian festival, and I was asked to come to Bangalore for the interview at about 10 a.m. So I used to live in a place called Salem. So the ride from Salem to Bangalore was like 4.5 hours to 5 hours by train. So I took a midnight train, landed up in Bangalore at about 5, 6 p.m., 6 a.m., changed, went to the office at 10 a.m. And I was made to wait there for the entire day, even before someone actually spoke to me. So the first conversation someone had with me was at about 5 p.m. in the evening. And then subsequently, there were multiple conversations, multiple interviews, rounds of interviews. And later on, when I asked my boss, why was I made to wait for 5 p.m. when I arrived at the office at 9:30, he said he wanted to check how patient I am. And he said that, I spoke to you and I gave you the job because you were patient and you did not get anxious or whatever. So that was the first test. And from there on, I think every time I wanted to do something, my boss would allow me to do it. So one of the things that he always said was that if you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing boundaries. And if you're making the same mistake again and again, then you're being foolish. You're not learning from those mistakes. So as long as you make new mistakes, I'm okay with it. And that's something that has stayed with me all through my life. And I've experimented with many things. As long as I don't make the same mistake again, I'm good. I know that I'm pushing boundaries in whatever it is that I'm trying to do. So that's one experience. And the second experience I distinctly remember from that point was that there was this early in my career, I was eager to sell something because that was my first sale that I was doing. And I quoted a wrong price, which was like 50% less than the price that I was supposed to quote.
Oops.
And because I quote that. Yeah, so I quoted the price. The customer, he also didn't say anything. He said, okay, order confirmed. And he gave me a really huge order. Let's say 10 times what he would usually have purchased
Right.
because he was getting such a good deal. So when I came back and told my boss, he then told me that you've given him a 50% discount. So what do you want me to do? It's not even at cost. So we will incur a significant loss by selling this at this price. So I told him, no, it's okay. I'll go back to the customer and apologize, saying that I'm new and whatever, and I'll cancel the order. My boss said, no, you've committed the order, you've taken the order, so we will honor it because you are representative of my company and whatever you've committed is my commitment. So let's honor this. Later on, when I asked him, why did you make me do that? Because at that point in time, the loss that my company incurred was 4 times my annual salary.
Wow.
In just that one order. He said, by having done that, I now know that you will never, ever make the same mistake again.
Yeah, yeah.
Your career, forget about when you're working for me. You will never make the same mistake in your career ever. So that's also something that has stayed with me. So I worked with him for 5 years. I learned a lot. And then I started with my father in his business because my father was not well. He had his bypass surgery. And so someone needed to step up and take up his business. In that, what I realized was that a lot of people, so it was a commission business, which means that there were a set of manufacturers who would sell through my father to the retail or the dealers who would buy from my father. And my father would make a small commission out of every deal that he would make. Let's say that he was doing about 500 tons of sales of the iron and steel material that he was selling a month. So I told my dad that we can easily double this. My dad was like, in his infinite wisdom, he said, it is not as easy as you think. And I said, I took it up as a challenge and I said, Dad, I'll show you how to do it. With all the enthusiasm, I went ahead and spoke to the dealers to whom I was selling. And I got orders for 50 tons in the first month. When I go back and place the orders at the manufacturing partners, they refused to take the orders. And I was like, baffled as to why would you refuse to take the orders? They said that there is a limited amount of production that we make. And we know that we sell through these 3 or 4 people. And we know that each one of them will sell X amount of material for us. I cannot just simply increase my production just because one of them is selling more. I do not want to impair my relationships with the other dealers by just selling more through you. So I will only sell to you or through you the same amount that I used to sell through your dad. I said, okay, so the existing manufacturers are not probably willing to grow. And for whatever reasons, they had their own constraints. So let me go and talk to other manufacturers. So I went and talked to other manufacturers. I realized that all of them had the same problem. So these were all mid-sized businesses, family-run businesses. So I said, okay, let me go and talk to the really large national pan-India players. And I realized that they had the same issue. They had a capacity and they were already able to sell the capacity. Unless I was able to sell their product at a significant amount of premium, they were not willing to sell through a new channel. There are many constraints that we need to be aware of before we can actually make any significant changes in a business. And some of these constraints are not necessarily technical. When I say technical, things that you can do to improve your process, therefore improve your efficiency, therefore increase your production. A lot of these are here in our minds and in our mindsets. So that led me to learning how mindsets work, how mindsets limit us, and how mindsets can actually also help us go beyond the limitations that we set for ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'll just stop there, maybe whichever way you want to take this forward.
No, I love what you said. There's a couple of things that I want to add. So that was a big shock for me too, because when I first got into business, I thought it was all about sales. Obviously, you want to keep customers happy, but I thought it was just more sales equals more growth and away you go. And then I helped a client add $1 million to her bottom line, and she almost got taken out by the IRS because when she was just around $1 million, her accountant was fine. But when we went to 2.6 million, her old accounting structure no longer served her properly and it caused more problems. And then hearing about stories like Netflix versus Blockbuster, where Netflix had Blockbuster was a $6 billion a year company and was driven into bankruptcy by Netflix. It really was a shocker for me, an eye opener, that you can't just go get more sales. And I love why you talked about that it's intricate. It's an intricate. Can you speak maybe a little bit about these constraints and customer success, the two together? because I think these are hand in hand. One is being able to, it depends what you're selling. And a lot of people in today's day and age, they maybe have an info product or they have a software product, and that the scalability is fantastic. But in the real world of physical products, of like commodities, farm goods, these sorts of things, even services to a certain extent, these are not as scalable. So can you maybe speak a little bit to handling these kinds of constraints and also keeping customer success in the forefront at the same time?
So I think if your customers are not happy and successful, there is no way you can scale your sales. That is a given. That is what I call a foundational truth. You cannot escape it. So irrespective of what you're doing, you need to keep your customers' success in mind. And that's something that has kept me in good stead all through my career. So one of the basic tenets that I follow is do whatever is necessary to help your customers achieve whatever they want to achieve through your product or service, whatever it is that you're trying to sell. So once that is taken care of, then there are a lot of other things that come into picture. For example, the ability of your team to help your customers adopt whatever it is that you're selling. If it is commodity, then it means that are they able to consume whatever you're selling to them, or for example, sell forward whatever you're selling to them. So I used to work for Saint-Gobain Glass at one point in time. And from a commodity point of view, it is easy for me to sell more to a dealer as long as he is able to sell it forward if he is able to consume whatever is being sold to them. So one of those two needs to happen, especially when it comes to info products or software, if I may say. Then it all boils down to the ability of your customer to adopt the software that you're selling. What that means is that it depends on the complexity of the software. So if you're selling something which is straightforward, self-consumed, then it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is to make sure that the UI or the UX of your product is developed in such a way that it is intuitive and your customer is able to immediately adopt and without any issue scale the usage of whatever it is that you're selling to them. The more complex the product becomes, let's say, for example, the company that I work for, SAP is not a very straightforward product. It takes a significant amount of time for an organization to even implement it, because there is whole stages of things that you need to do before someone can actually implement software. So you need to understand the business processes. You need to map the business processes. You need to map the business processes with the software. You need to make sure that there is a whole lot of project management principles involved in order to, from the time you actually scope to actually start implementing, to testing, to QA, to going live. It's a long process. It's shrinking a lot. So what used to take maybe 1.5 years to implement, today probably you can go live in 3 months or in weeks. But still, it requires a significant amount of participation from a significant amount of people within the customer's organization. If you come to this side of the spectrum, what becomes super important is for the customer or for the sales guys and the customer success team to work with the customer to how should they go about actually, number one, implementing the product so that the implementation is successful. And once the product is gone, once the customer goes live with it, then what are the things that they need to do in order for them to derive the benefits that actually can be derived from implementing something like an SAP solution, which requires, for example, teaching them about what it means from going from having a non-IT system to an IT system, or a homegrown IT system to a really scalable enterprise IT system. It also means telling them the intricacies of who all should be involved in the process. So one of the things that then what you need to do is to go back to your sales process and create the sales process such that you can actually then start scaling your ability to sell. So foundational is ensuring whoever you have as customers are successful. And second level is ensuring that they are able to buy, implement, and adopt whatever it is that you're selling or consume whatever it is you're selling. So once these two foundational layers are done, then you need to look at sales and look at how can you scale your business so that the foundational part aspect of whatever you sell will actually get implemented and will actually get adopted and will actually result in customer success is already taken care of. So unless those two bottom pillars are not there, you can sell more, but what you see is that
refunds and returns,
refunds and returns and churn and whatever else that you are looking at. So even when it comes to sales, I'm talking about large enterprise level, enterprise wide deals. It doesn't matter whether it is a software or a commodity. I've come up with a framework which actually helps scale sales process.
Okay.
So if it is okay, I can maybe
Let's do it.
elaborate a little bit about the
Yeah.
framework. I call this as a simpler sales framework. So it's an acronym. So S stands for surprise with insights. So when you're looking at large scale deals, maybe 500K and above, you are typically selling to a C-suite or a senior member of the enterprise, which means that finding time with them is also going to be difficult because these are out really busy executives. And when you find time, you need to make an impression so that they call you back for a subsequent engagement. So in order for you to be able to do that, you need to surprise them with an insight that makes them go, oh, I didn't know about that. So can you tell me more? So that's the reaction that you're going for. So the second step is then you need to inspire them with a vision. So this could be a personal vision in terms of could potentially their career look like. It could be an enterprise vision, which means that what could the company look like or what could your team look like maybe a year down, assuming that, what's all about the art of the possible. So then you create a motivation to actually act. So once you've painted a vision and they see the vision and agree that's a good vision or that's a good place to go towards, you need to create motivation to act. Most sales deals stop because of the resistance at status quo. And this is a super important step in order for you to actually overcome the status quo, even have the chance to overcome the status quo. I'm not saying that this will actually help you overcome the status quo, but at least it gives you the probability that you will actually overcome status quo. So once you've done all of that, then you position yourself as the person who can actually help the customer realize the vision that you're painting with them. And then once you've positioned yourself as the person, then you position your product, then you position your company as the partner in choice who can actually help that particular person achieve or realize the vision that they painted. So once you've done that, and once you've alignment at that level, then you need to lead the sales process. What do I mean by lead the sales process? It means that you need to tell them, you make them the champions for you within their organization. Which means that you not only show them or give them the right collaterals, the right information, the right processes, you also tell them at which stage to involve which person within their organization, because you've done this multiple times across multiple companies. So, for example, at a particular stage, you need to involve the manufacturing guy. At a particular stage, you need to involve the finance guys. At a particular stage, you need to involve the CIO. At a particular stage, you need to probably involve the commercial guys. So you need to tell them which stage should they involve which person in their organization. How do you involve them? What do you tell them? How do you engage them? And how do you bring them all together? So that, and then, close the deal. And it is not just externally, it is also the same internally within your organization as well. So if you're talking about a complex deal, I'm pretty sure that you're not the only person talking to the customer.
Right.
You have a team which goes and answers questions, provides more deeper technical expertise and all of that. So you orchestrate both within your organization and also within your customer organization or the prospect organization. So the result of that is going to be the signing of the deal. So once the signing of the deal is done, you hand it over to the customer success team so that they can actually execute on the vision and help the customer realize the vision. Doesn't mean that you give it to the customer success team and forget. You need to stay involved and know that the project is on track and that the customer success team has got everything that they need in order for them to help the customers realize the vision. And once the customers have realized the vision, you go back to them and do the entire process again. If you actually think of a benzene ring, I don't know if you have a benzene ring. So it's like what do you call? It's you should probably do a Google search. It's a hexagon. It's a hexagon with a circle in between.
The molecule.
Yeah, the molecule. Right?
Yeah, it's so
this process is
okay.
So you go, not only do you go from one step to the other, but in between, in the middle, there is a circle which connects all these processes, which means that at any point in time, you feel that you're not where you're supposed to be in terms of the customer being where they are supposed to be. You go back to where they are, you the entire process. So this then helps you scale your sales. And therefore, and once you're able to scale, you already have the backend in terms of the customer success and the pillar already in place, which helps the customers realize the benefits and also the processes in place to help them stay happy. So that then is the formula for scaling your business, but in a way that doesn't break your business.
I love that. So can we go through this? The acronym was simple. Surprise them with an insight where they go, oh, I didn't know that. Tell me more. Inspire them with a vision. Motivate them to act. Help overcome the status quo. Position yourself as the person. Position your product. Position your company as the solution to help them achieve the vision. Then you want to lead the sales process, meaning empower them with the resources and tools of what it's going to take to get it done. And almost like in a sales, there's always a push-pull. And if you constantly push, they back up. So now it's almost like takeaway selling. Hey, we can help you. You're motivated. We want to help. But listen, you have to participate in your own survival. That's in my family. Like we say that I have a daughter and a son, and you have to participate in your own survival, kid. And so now you back off and I'm here. You're not neglecting, but they need to take the torch, so to speak. And what was the last one? The E.
Execute, which is the execute. Yeah. So it's not simple, it's simpler.
The deal. Got it.
Yeah. So the last step is rinse and repeat, which is you go through the process with the next evolution of your product or the next product or the next service that you want to sell to them.
Got it. Rinse and repeat. So it's simpler. Surprise them with insight, inspire them with a vision, motivate them to act, position yourself, your product, your company as the option, the solution to help them achieve the vision. Lead the sales process, meaning you empower them with who to engage with, the materials to engage, and who to involve between both companies. And then execute after signing the deal, meaning that you hand over to the customer success team, but you're still very involved to make sure that they get what you promised. And then rinse and repeat from the top. That's a great tip. So now, what are some of the habits that you feel are most, actually, before I ask that, how long? I know every company is different, but is there any benchmarks for how long someone can know? Obviously, if you're selling bridges, there's a different buying cycle, but as a rule of thumb, would you say there's any, because enterprise level sales are slower than a typical direct to consumer in that? Is there some sort of benchmark you provide for time?
I can give you a thumb of rule. Again, this is just very unique to every industry or very unique to every product that you're trying to sell. But the thumb rule, as far as I'm concerned, is the number of people from the customer side that are involved is the number of typically months that it takes to close the deal. So if in a customer side, for example, there is only one person, then only one deciding authority or only one person is involved and he can take the decision, then it's a 1 month cycle. If there are 10 people involved, then it's a 10-month cycle. If there are 15 people involved, then it is a 15 people cycle. That's the sum of rule that I have in my experience.
Yeah, no, I love that because I've had to do that. I remember I was shocked the first time I tried to do a deal where it was like management by committee. And I was so used to dealing with owner operators directly in that. So I think that's a great, because I think I was trying to deal with a university in Canada and there was 2 or 3 different committees involved, each with 6, 7, 8 people. And after 6, 8 months, I'm done. I'm done. This is going nowhere. I don't know how you guys get anything done. I'm out. But now listening to your rule of thumb, okay, that makes much better sense. And that's why I asked, to help people listening have a benchmark in mind, set realistic expectations for themselves.
Yeah. So that's the thumb rule that I've seen. Yeah.
And so what are some of the most important habits that you feel that have helped you and clients that you work with successfully? What are the most important habits? We talked about sales framework. We talked about having a foundation of customer success. Obviously, that's mission critical. What about some of the habits, the day-to-day, quarterly, annual habits that you think are most important?
From a customer advocacy or a customer success point of view, there are only 3 things that I think are super important. Number 1, always say things as they are. So I do not sugarcoat anything. I do not lie about the situation. I tell the customers what the situation is as it is, so that they can plan and they are aware of what's happening. So what's the worst thing that can happen in a situation when you're dealing with customers is they get surprised. Nobody likes bad surprises. So if there is a situation in which there is a challenge, and if there is a situation where I know that it's going to take time, or if something is not possible, I've always been upright and upfront with my customers, and they really appreciate. While they may not like what I'm saying, but they like it that I'm saying this.
Right.
Because they are answerable to a lot of other people as well within their own organization. Yep. And if I keep them in the dark, they are by default keeping their people in the dark, which they don't like. So that's rule number one, or habit number one. I tell it as it is, and do it humbly and empathetically. So it's not that I'm arrogant or I'm being non-empathetic with what I'm saying. I know that there are times when there are difficult communication to be done. I do it with empathy and with understanding. And so that's rule number one. Always keep them abreast of whatever is happening without fail. So the number two is, even if I don't have any information or an update to them, I let them know that I'm working on what we discussed and that I'll come back to you. So that they know that what we discussed was not forgotten. So let's say, for example, there is something that takes me maybe a few weeks for me to organize within my organization, something that the customer has requested. I'll send them an update every week saying that, okay, this is what has happened, this is what I've done, and I'm still working on it. It's taking longer than I expected, but please do remember that I'm still working on it. So always, again, leads to the first point, which is never keep them in the dark. Last but not the least, there are times when you follow the rules and there are times when you break the rules. And knowing when to do what is super critical. So, for example, there are times when in your organization you are supposed to follow a specific process, and most cases you do follow the process. But there are times when the process absolutely doesn't make any sense, and in those scenarios, and it is critical for the customer or for whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve, that I break the process. So in those cases, I go ahead and do what I need to do, and with the concept that it's better to apologize than to seek, as long as you come from the right mindset with the best thing for both your company and for your customers.
Right.
So that's the second, from a customer success point of view. From a overall life point of view, I have about 12 principles that I typically follow when it comes to habits. So one is staying healthy. When I say healthy, physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, I keep learning, because we are living in a world when we are surrounded by artificial intelligence and smart machines, right? So the second book that I wrote, Thrive, is all about, and one of the key principles in that was that if we really want to thrive in this world, we need to constantly learn. I have this quote which says that once the machines start learning, they'll never stop.
Right.
Neither should we. So that's another principle that I live by. And the other habit that I always have is that whatever I commit, at least in the professional realm, I deliver.
I like that. And so in the company itself, what sort of specific skills or behaviors do you believe are important for your staff, maybe your marketing and sales staff, to improve or develop?
While it's very simple to say that you need to know the customers that you're selling to or you're marketing to, but you'll be surprised how many times and in how many organizations the marketing team never has access to a customer at all. They've never spoken to a customer or spoken to a customer who with a particular problem that they're trying to solve with their product. So know your customer. So that's number one. Number two, depending upon the size of the company. So if it is a small startup, this is slightly different. If it is a large organization like SAP, it's different. So in small startups or maybe 15, 20 people organizations, I think the most fundamental skill is the ability to multitask or multi-role. So you're doing marketing, you're doing sales, you're also doing something else, depending upon whatever is required for you to be done. So being open and flexible to taking on multiple roles or multiple hats in a way is super important. The more larger the organization, the more specialized your skills become, and the more the ability to create alignment becomes the more important skill. So the ability to talk about what you're trying to achieve and what's in it for the others who you need to work with becomes the most critical skill in larger organizations. The more bigger the organization, the more critical this skill of aligning people to whatever it is that you're trying to do. That's again very straightforward, very simple, but this one thing requires so many different things. It requires you to have good communication skills. It requires you to know exactly what you're trying to do. It requires you to have empathy for the others, so that you understand what it is that their teams are trying to do and how that relates to what you are asking them to do with you. It requires the ability to collaborate. It requires the ability to influence both sideways, upwards, downwards. It requires your ability to communicate clearly exactly what you want. It requires your ability to project manage things It requires leadership skills simply because of the fact that by virtue of, it doesn't matter which role you are in, it doesn't matter how many people report into you. If you are working in a large organization, you are required to show leadership skills. Only then will people actually want to work with you. Only then will people want to align with you. You need to show results, and that comes from having the ability to do all of this.
So how do you approach employee training and development within SAP to keep and help people stay aligned while developing their specialized skills in sales and marketing?
So I think probably I'm not the best person to answer this, but I can answer this. I'll try to answer this as an end user who actually goes through these trainings or these processes that SAP has, right? So for example, we follow the 70-20-10 rule that almost all organizations follow. So 70% of what you're learning is on the job, 20% of what you're learning is through mentoring and coaching, and 10% of what you're learning is through formal training programs that the organization creates and offers. So as an organization, SAP has signed up for a whole slew of online trainings that are available, for example, LinkedIn Learning and other curriculum providers. So for example, today, if I want to, let's say, learn a particular skill, I can simply go into the portal and see if there is any online course that is already available on that particular skill. So there is a whole array of online courses that I can do. And then there is a whole set of courses, in-person training courses that are offered. Again, I can go and sign up. Some of these are offered for free. Some of these are charged to the cost center that you belong to. So that's another thing that I can do. Then, of course, there is a way SAP subsidizes formal education. For example, if I want to, let's say, do an executive MBA or do a PhD, so there is a program that allows me to kind of subsidize the cost of the formal education as long as there is a certain conditions that are being met. Internally, when it comes to the 20% mentoring and coaching, there are about 300 coaches and mentors that have been identified within the organization. So I can always reach out to any of them and ask them for a mentoring or a coaching session. If you are at a certain level, you can also seek external coaches and mentors, which the company pays for. And of course, the 70% on-the-job training is something that you learn. You follow someone that you think has something to teach. For example, last 2 months, I've been following the head of customer success for the region just to understand how the larger ecosystem of the teams function and what are their challenges and what are some of the things that they struggle with, just to figure out if there is any way that the work that I do or what I do with my customers, actually I can help them in what they're trying to achieve, and vice versa. If there is something that they're doing really well, which could help me in helping customers succeed, I can actually leverage that as well. So that's the typical process that is available. And of course, personally, I read a lot. I read on an average about 40-45 books a year. I follow blogs. So I have a daily routine. I have a 1 hour blocked in my calendar every day just to read the blogs that I follow. I have about 180 blogs that I follow. I skim through all of them every day, but I pick 10 blog posts, 8 to 10 blog posts that I actually go and read for real. And of course, I do whatever courses that I need to do. I follow people. And one of the things that as an organization, SAP believes is that each employee's learning is our own responsibility. It's not a manager's responsibility or the company's responsibility to grow us. It is our responsibility. The company will do whatever needs to be done, but we need to drive it. Right. And that's probably, I think, is also the right way to do.
And what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see your clients and other entrepreneurs making? We've danced around a bunch of tips and tricks and frameworks, but just to really hit the nail on the head, what do you think the biggest failings are?
So I think failings most fundamental is that people think they can short circuit processes and they can find shortcuts to success. One of the things that I have learned both through my own personal experience, through watching many customers struggle with, many entrepreneurs struggle with, is trying to find shortcuts to things. For example, I'll give you an example. Let's take some of my customers, right? So these are CIOs at really large organizations that are trying to implement SAP software. So I know that a particular project will fail when I see the project team actually trying to speed up the process by short circuiting or trying to find shortcuts. It's a different thing to find better ways to do things. But the things that need to be done need to be done. You cannot skip them. And the moment you try to skip them, what happens is it only creates bigger and bigger problems. So that's number one. Number two is not addressing the problem right at the time, the first time you see a particular problem. And how do you address the problem is not by immediately going after the solution for that particular problem. It is to spend time to understand the problem. So the biggest mistake people do is, okay, I'm having this X issue. And immediately they go into brainstorming mode and try to come up with 10 different ways to solve that problem without really understanding what caused the problem. So what that means is that you're only putting band-aids without actually finding the root cause, solving the root cause. And most often, the root cause always lies elsewhere. So if there is a problem in sales, the root cause is never in sales. Root cause is somewhere else.
Right.
And because of the silos that organizations have, they don't go looking for these problems that are elsewhere. And unless you do that, it becomes extremely short-term solution to these problems. And these problems only get bigger and bigger and bigger. And people keep trying to solve that bigger problem without actually going and solving the root cause. I think those are the two fundamental ones. And third one, I think people make a mistake is that they do not realize that everything is connected to everything else. And this is a fundamental physics principle. So if you actually look at one of the most fundamental principles of physics, it says that everything is connected to everything else. And that's true in our lives as well, in our businesses as well. Everything is connected to everything else. If you think you can just plain sell something to someone by pure logic, doesn't work. You need to bring in logic, you need to bring emotions, you need to bring everything that you have at play, heart, mind, and gut. So you need to bring your intuition to play, you need to bring your empathy to play, you need to bring your ability to think logically to play in any given situation. Only when all these three come together do you realize that you have the ability to go beyond what seems to be the problem.
I love this. I love this a lot. Yeah, it's like the theory of constraints. It was a book talking about if you have a 5-step process and you have a bottleneck at step 3, increasing performance of step 1 will do nothing because you have a choke point at step 3.
No,
so
it'll create more problems.
Right.
It'll create more problems.
So the highest impact thing you can do is focus on your bottlenecks. And so I love that. I love that. And when you're talking
by the way, you brought up, by the way, just I cannot let this go. You brought up theory of constraints. Dr. Eliyahu Goldratt is one of the persons that I think has influenced my thinking the most. In fact, I have an ongoing list of people that I find insanely interesting. On my blog, I talk about them. I recognize them publicly as a tribute to them. And Dr. Eli Goldratt was number 1 on that list.
Really? I love that. Yeah, okay. Well, pat on the back, Daryl. Okay. Also, you talked about when identifying the problem. So to me, that reminds me of a shortened engineering process, which is brainstorm, research, prototype, final build. And when you talk about fixing the problem, to brainstorm what might be the root cause of the problem, research them to figure them out, and then prototype, is this really going to fix the problem? And then but so many people, they just problem final build, and then it all falls to pieces. And so I think anytime you try to achieve something, Naval is one of mine. If I had to pick a list, Naval Ravikant is on my list of influential people. And he talks about it's not just 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 iterations. And I think that really speaks to that model of brainstorm, research, prototype, final build, that you're not just going to apply a Band-Aid and it's going to fix everything. You really, for a permanent long-term solution, you really have to do some iterations in it and some thinking on it. And it also ties in.
There is a book that I would like to recommend called Upstream. I think if I'm not wrong, the book is called Upstream by Heath Brothers. Dan and his brother, I'm forgetting his name now. So that's a brilliant book that you can actually read to understand how do you find the real problem, which are usually upstream from where you are.
Yeah. And what I wanted to say was I'm a big fan of Karl Popper, one of the original science educators. And he said, there is no scientific method that guarantees breakthroughs. If there were, we would have more scientific breakthroughs with more regularity and predictability. What we have is a process we follow to stop fooling ourselves. And this can be expressed as a formula of P1 plus TS plus EE equals P2. And so that's problem 1 plus temporary solution plus eliminate errors equals problem 2. Or you're still at problem 1, but you've learned more, which also fits into the whole brainstorm, research, prototype, final build, right? And how do we eliminate errors? Through observation, experimentation, data collection and analysis, collaboration with others, debate, right? Discourse, taking in a larger data set to make our analysis from. So I think this is a really powerful checklist that you've given. And I've got pages of notes. Where do you think the future of business is going. And what do you think are the biggest trends people should be aware of, pros and cons of both, next 5, 10, 15 years?
I think the amount of products, services, both physical as well as bits and pieces, bits you will find that are infused by software is going to go up significantly. So it doesn't matter whether you're buying physical products or software, you will find that more and more will be infused with technology if it's already not the case. In the next 5 years, I think 5 to 10 years, I have a feeling that we'll be surrounded more and more by both within our organizations as well as in our personal lives by smart machines and intelligent algorithms, which means that we need to get better at interacting with them. We need to get better at working with them. We need to get better at understanding them. So right now, all the artificial intelligence that is prevalent in the world is a black box, which I'm sure at some point in time, due to regulations, due to whatever ethics or whatever is the reason, you will find that more and more of these AI tools will be required to be able to come up with a reason why they decided whatever it is that they decided. So which means that there will be an ability for us to understand these technologies better, which means also that our ability to understand and deal with data is going to be put to the test. It also means that our ability to learning how to learn is going to get super important, because every year, every 2 years, or every 6 months, maybe even, there will be new things that will keep coming at us. And the shelf life of whatever you learn is going to be only that much, which is 3 months, maybe at most, which means every 3 months, you need to be able to figure out what is the next thing that you need to learn. And which means that unless you master this ability of learning how to learn, you cannot keep pace whatever is happening around you in the world. So that becomes your meta skill that you need to build for yourself, whatever it means. Some people learn through reading, some people learn through watching videos, some people learn through courses, some people learn through talking to people.
Yep.
Whatever is your mechanism to learn, you need to nail down this process of how you learn, so that whenever there is new things coming up, you need to constantly update. From a business point of view, I have a feeling that we will be going back to the era where you will have more and more small businesses around you rather than really large businesses. So there will be large businesses, but these will be behemoths. In the, let's say, 400 years back, you used to have kings, and you used to have what you call their, if I may say so. So these will be the large corporations that are there, very few in number, but very powerful. Everyone else will be artisans and like small businesses that will interact with each other. And it will be more and more difficult to become a large organization. Probably in 10 years' time, I would say that it no longer will make sense for an organization to be, let's say, 200,000 people large, unless you are like an Amazon or a Microsoft, which are foundational for everyone else to build their businesses on. That's my one prediction, which is, we're moving towards more and more smaller organizations, successful smaller organizations, rather than really large behemoth organizations.
I like that too, because I beat the drum of small and medium-sized business a lot on the show, because we are the middle class, and without middle class, it was kings and peons. And so I think it's important that we really support them. And I really agree with everything that you said, especially talking about learning how to learn. A shameless plug here, I would say learning how to learn under the 8 critical success factors our research uncovered, because I strongly believe that they will determine who thrives and survives in the future and who doesn't, because the tactics will frequently change. The strategies sometimes change, but the principles almost never change. And that's why I put that asterisk on it. But I think everything else you said is super important. And it's almost exciting. I'm excited about the future. Mukesh, this has been a great interview. I have pages of notes. People may want to listen to this a couple of times to make sure they got all the good from it. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that I should have asked you?
Maybe a shameless plug from my end.
Yeah.
One of the things that people miss is to have balance in our lives. I say there are 3 things that we need to keep in balance, right? So you need to be healthy, you need to be wealthy, and you need to be wise. I've written a book which is called Being Happy. It's a collection of really short stories, most of them between 1 to 1.5 pages long, which talks about ancient wisdom for happy living or wise living. So if you really think that that's something that is off balance in your life, please do check it out. It's available on Amazon. It's called Being Happy by Mukesh Gupta, collection of short stories. Yeah.
And they can find out
That's
more on your
something that I would
website,
really.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So Being Happy is not on my website, but all the other books and all the blogs that I have 860 plus blogs on my website on all sorts of topics: sales, marketing, business development, leadership, innovation, entrepreneurship, strategy, systems thinking, all sorts of them, 860 of them. I have a podcast which is called Pushing Beyond the Obvious. It's linked to that on the website as well. But yeah, the only thing that is not linked to my website is the book Being Happy,
Got it.
which
So if
probably I should.
if people want to learn more, they should go check out rmukeshgupta.com, rmukeshgupta.com. You can also look him up on LinkedIn, Mukesh Gupta, Mukesh Gupta. We found him if he's with SAP. Mukesh, this has been such a great, informative, and very valuable, like hard-hitting call. Thank you so much, knowing that you have your own following, your own podcast, your own direct reports you could be taking care of. Thank you for coming and sharing with me and my audience. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And it's been an honor to talk to you, Daryl. Looking forward to the future.